I've always known how to keep my fire hidden, but sometimes it burns too bright to stay unseen. On a balmy Saturday evening, my cousin Lila hosted her engagement party at our family's sprawling lakeside home. The place was packed, relatives, old neighbors, and friends who still acted like they knew me better than I knew myself. Laughter bounced off the wooden beams, glasses clinked, and the air smelled of rosemary and grilled steak. But I felt it, as always, the subtle weight of their glances, like I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. "You still in that beat-up blue hatchback?" Uncle Ray called out, his voice cutting through the chatter. A few cousins snickered. Lila shot me a pitying smile. "Oh, Nora's just resourceful," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "She's always been so practical." Her fiancé Ethan nodded politely, clueless to the barb. I just smiled, stirring my iced tea. I didn't owe them a defense. As the servers cleared the main course, Ethan leaned forward, his voice casual but curious. "Hey, Nora, random question. Any chance you're connected to a plane I saw in the Bahamas last week? Had Elliott Ventures written on it." The room froze, fork stilled, my aunt's wineglass hovered mid-air. I met his gaze, calm as ever, and said, "Yeah, that's mine." The silence was deafening. For years it's been like this. Family gatherings were a gauntlet of sly digs, dressed up as jokes. They saw me as the oddball, the sister who never settled, who didn't flaunt a ring or a suburban house, who didn't post curated life updates on Instagram. I'd tried to bridge the gap once. I sent lavish gifts, called on birthdays, even offered to cover Lila's wedding venue deposit. She told everyone I was showing off, so I stopped trying. At 23, I left for Portland, leaving behind their small-town expectations. They called it running, I called it surviving. I scraped by, working odd jobs, living in a cramped studio with flickering lights, eating instant noodles for months. On a whim, I built an app to help local bakeries track inventory. It was just a side gig, coded in the early hours after shifts at a call center. I burned out twice, but kept going. 4 years later, a Canadian retailer stumbled across it and asked if I'd thought about expanding. I hadn't, but I did. With grit and endless coffee, I scaled it. A seed round followed, then a Series B. By 33, I had a team, a sleek office, and clients across 3 continents. When I sold the company, the payout was enough to buy a small island. I kept my old car, though. It felt like armor, keeping my life quiet. But to my family, I was still the quirky one, too stubborn to grow up, like Lila and her perfect fiancé and her Pinterest-worthy life. They never asked what I did. My mother would sigh, "Nora's just independent," like it was a flaw. My aunt once whispered at Christmas, "At least Lila's living a real life." It stung, then it didn't. I stopped caring. They assumed I was scraping by because I didn't flash designer bags or boast about my travels. I let them. My victories were mine alone. But that night, I showed up. Not for them, but for me. I had my reasons. And when Ethan dropped that bombshell about the jet, it wasn't planned, but damn, it felt good. At 29, I'd landed in the ER with a burst gallbladder. I was out for weeks, weak and alone. Not one family member called. A coworker I barely knew brought me groceries and checked on me daily. My mother? She didn't even know. Or maybe she did and didn't care. That was the moment I stopped expecting anything. I let their birthdays slide, stopped sending cards. I showed up for big events, brought thoughtful gifts, played the role of distant cousin, but I kept my heart at arm's length. When my company hit $3 million in revenue, I didn't tell them. Not when I hired my 50th employee, not when I inked a deal that changed my life. Why bother? They'd call it a fluke or accuse me of lying. My mother would say I was too proud. Lila would spread rumors that I'd gotten lucky. So I stayed silent, pouring my wealth into a new startup, sustainable, impactful, anonymous. I flew economy, lived modestly. My team knew my worth. My partners trusted me. That was enough. But that night, as the truth spilled out over tiramisu, it landed differently. Leela's perfect evening, string lights glowing, linen tablecloths pristine, jazz humming, was meant to be her stage. I arrived late, slipping in through the garden gate in a plain navy dress, no brand name in sight. My mother greeted me with, "We didn't think you'd come," code for "we wished you hadn't." Leela scanned me, smirking, "Always so minimalist, Nora." The dinner rolled on, their chatter a familiar hum, praise for my cousin's new law firm job, cheers for Leela's engagement photos. I nodded, stayed quiet. Then came the jabs. "Still in that clunky car?" Someone laughed. "Nora's too humble for fancy things," Leela said, her smile sharp. I sipped my tea, let it slide. Then Ethan's question hit like a spark in dry grass. "Elliot Ventures, that's you?" Leela's face drained of color. My uncle's fork clattered. I held Ethan's gaze. "That's me," I said, voice steady. He pressed, "Wait, you're the one who sold that logistics platform? That was massive." Leela laughed, shrill. "She's joking, right?" I stood, folding my napkin. "I've got an early meeting. Congrats again." Every eye followed me as I left. No one spoke.
I drove home, windows down, the night air sharp. Lila was probably scrambling to rewrite the story, to keep her spotlight. But for once, the narrative wasn't hers. It came from Ethan, someone they respected, and that made it undeniable. At midnight, my phone lit up. "Ethan, asterisk didn't mean to stir things up. Just admire what you've built, asterisk I typed back, asterisk no worries. I'm used to it." That was just truth, asterisk he sent a thumbs up. It was enough. The next day, my mother texted, "Why didn't you tell us about your company?" I didn't reply. It wasn't about secrecy, it was about their refusal to see me. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted coffee. I declined. Their interest wasn't about me, it was about my story's new shape. Days later, I boarded the Bahamas jet, not to flaunt, but to move forward. Sipping sparkling water, I watched the ocean glitter below. I'd spent years thinking I needed their approval, their love. I'd tried to earn it, to prove myself. But love isn't a transaction, and family isn't a courtroom. Now, I live for me. My worth isn't their verdict, it's in the code I wrote, the teams I built, the risks I took when no one believed. It's in the peace I found by letting go. They'll keep talking, spinning tales of who I am. Let them. I don't live in their story anymore. I used to think closure meant winning their respect. Now I know it's quieter, it's walking away, not to prove a point, but to live your truth. It's the hum of a jet engine, carrying you somewhere they'll never follow. And as the clouds parted, I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I was free.